Welcome, everyone. It's time for another afternoon saloon. This saloon is special. It's our Halloween edition. And so we will have a cocktail being made from Ship Tavern with bartender Chuck Smith. And then in addition, he'll be giving us a ghost story, although nothing can be scarier in comparison to this year. So without further ado, let me introduce Chuck Smith from Ship Tavern. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi. Hey, how's it going? It's nice to be with everybody today here at the Brown Palace Saloon Ship Tavern. I'm pretty excited to make this drink for you. I'm really excited that I'm getting to make it without a mask on. So that's something that's very different for me these days. We're going to be making the Rum House Punch. This is a punch goes back to colonial days. So that's kind of why I chose it, because I can just think of all the spirits and stuff that are inside of it from all the people that have drank it in the past. It starts with a Ron Zacapa rum. You could use any other dark rum that you'd like if you can't get a hold of this. And I'm going to measure it out. We got 1.5 ounces of rum into my shaker. Next up will be our cognac. And again, we're using Hennessy, but you can use any cognac or brandy that you can find. And that's 1/2 ounce of cognac. And then we're going to peach schnapps. And really, with any punch drink, this is kind of a chef's creation rather than a baker's creation, in that you can kind of suit the ingredients to your needs, whatever suits your taste. Those are the alcohol. That's the alcohol base. And then we're going to add the citrus, which is the acid. So any drink's going to have a sugar base, acid base, and alcohol base. So this is the acid. This is lime juice. We're going to go just a smidge, 0.25 of that. Then we're going to add the lemon juice. That's 0.75. And then the sugar. We're going to add that. And if you're making this at home, I don't know if you realize what we just did. So we took lemon and lime juice and sugar. So in essence, what we've made is lemonade with a little lime punch. So if you're going to batch this at home, you can get a really nice lemonade from the store, like something pretty high quality, and that will work as well. Gonna give it a good shake. And then I'm gonna strain it into my glass. Here at the Ship Tavern, we use big cubes. Those are a little harder for you guys to make at home. You can use it over little cubes as well. We got the finished product here. And to top it off, I've got some nutmeg, and I'm going to grate some nutmeg over it. And that's what it looks like. And the great thing about this, especially with holidays coming up, is you can batch this, so you can just make the recipe larger and make it in a big batch. That's what it's originally made for. It's a punch. And serve it to your guests without any hassle while you're entertaining.
Awesome. Here.
Pretty good.
So, Chuck, I know that Ship Tavern has its share with the Brown Palace of ghost stories. Can you tell us one of your favorite ghost stories from Ship Tavern?
Yeah, I've been in this tavern for a long time. And a lot of times I'm here late at night all by myself. So I've kind of seen and heard some strange things. But I think the strangest thing that I've ever experienced, if you go behind into our kitchen back there, we have a crew, and it's just a one-man crew, and he comes in and cleans all our stoves late at night. So generally between midnight and like 3 a.m. And for the longest time, for about 5 years, it was this guy named Dean. And Dean quit suddenly one day, and I went back there and I asked him why he was quitting, and he said, well, for the last 2 weeks, every night that I've been back there cleaning the stoves, after everybody's gone, I hear this knock on the door, which is our sin. He goes in and looks, there's nobody there. This went on for 2 weeks until finally he ended up saying that he'd had enough and he left. And that was a 5-year job that he left, and he had no other job to go to. So I know he was pretty serious about that. I thought that was pretty spooky.
That's very spooky. I mean, I think we'd all be terrified with that. Hopefully, ghosts don't learn how to get on Zoom or.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we'd love to have any of you guys come on in and experience it for yourself. We have had 2 murders in this very bar. In fact, right where I'm standing here today, in 1946, there was a shooting, and a gentleman who was a military veteran was sitting at the bar. He was fairly drunk and fairly disgruntled, and he got in an argument with another gentleman and shot him, and the guy fell over and never made it out. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing that ghost come in, but I have met his grandniece and then his great grandniece as well. They came into the bar one night to experience where this all happened. So that was pretty interesting as well.
I love it. I love all things spooky. So I'll definitely be in. Are you doing both takeout and in person during this, or is it strictly in person dining?
No, you can get takeout or in person. Due to the new regulations, we're down to 25%, but we still have plenty of room in here, and we can seat 6 at the bar and then another 35 in the restaurant. And then we've got a huge lobby on the weekends. We have a jazz trio that plays out there to entertain everybody. Lots of places to kind of grab a drink and walk around in a lobby that's got like a 7-story ceiling. So, plenty of air circulation, pretty good place to spend a few hours on the weekend.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Chuck, and we'll keep you around in case we have some questions later on. Thank you again, and cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
All right. Whew. That makes you think twice when you're in the bar if there's a ghost or someone knocking behind you. But let's move to something that's not scary. This person is amazing. She has just started at MCA as the new Ellen Bruss Senior Curator. We are so lucky to have her, and I'm excited to let everyone meet her today. Please help welcome Miranda Lash. Hi, Miranda.
Everyone. Hi, Brad.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, everyone, for being here today as part of Afternoon Saloon. I love the drink introduction by Chuck. I feel very thirsty and very eager to partake, as soon as possible. But my role here today is to tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit of what to look forward to in the MCA in the months and years to come. And one thing I do want to say is that, yes, I completely agree with Brad that we're living in unnerving times and scary times, but I'd like to position art as an antidote to fear, as something that is a force of hope, a force of social justice in society potentially, and a force that is part of any healthy democracy. So just know that I believe that in supporting art and the supporting artists, you are making a healthy society and democracy for those around you. And so please come be a part of that at the MCA. I'm going to share with you first a couple projects that I did at New Orleans Museum of Art. By way of context, I worked in New Orleans from 2007 to 2014, so very much in the post-Katrina period, following the extensive flooding and levee failures caused by Hurricane Katrina in 2005. It was a really exciting time to be a part of the city. because the city was really grappling with how do we use art to respond to crisis? How do we use art as part of rebuilding the city? And I very much learned from that experience in New Orleans that even in times of crisis, art is perhaps needed more than ever. You need art to get you through crisis and to show you other ways of being. So the first artwork I'm going to show you is an artwork by the street artist Saloon. It's a sea goddess called Thalassa that we showed in 2011. So what you're seeing here is a 20-foot tall sea goddess made of wheat pasting and paper cutouts that was created by the street artist Saloon in collaboration with the organization New Orleans Airlift, which is an amazing assemblage of artists run by an incredible group of individuals. She was suspended with her tentacles extending out through the neoclassical Great Hall. I loved that this street artist loved to work almost exclusively at night. So we would come in at night with a whole crew of people, create her, and then leave her unveiled in the morning for people to see. I think it's a great example of how I like to work both within the museum walls, but also with artists and organizations beyond the museum walls. Next slide, please. The next art project I would like to share with you is an artwork by the artwork of Rashad Newsom, and a project I did at New Orleans Museum of Art was called King of Arms. Now Rashad Newsom was a New Orleans native who has actually made his name as doing incredible avant-garde work in the realm of Vogue dancing and using Vogue dancers as part of the ballroom scene in New York City. So what we invited him to do was come bring that knowledge back to New Orleans. He was fascinated by rap culture in New Orleans and wanted to collaborate with Cash Money Records. So what you're seeing here are collages, and by the way, a custom wrapped Lamborghini that he created for the show, where the collages are inspired by the artistry that you find in New Orleans Mardi Gras, the flamboyance of New York Vogue. And then he wanted to layer in a few more elements, including the incredible history of the Mardi Gras Indians and the incredible history of Mardi Gras second line processions and coronation ceremonies. In other words, the coronation of Mardi Gras kings and queens. So in the next slide, you'll see that as part of this project, we created a coronation ceremony for Rashad where he got to be the King of Arms. We had a second line procession with marching bands and Mardi Gras Indians, and ultimately a presentation with Vogue dancers who anointed him king of this regal ceremony and presenting his worth and his value as an artist. So I would say it was a really fun example of work I like to do that integrates not just fine art compositions, but also ties in with music and ties in with the culture of the city that I'm working in. So the next slide I'd love to show you gets into a more expansive project that I did with the Speed Art Museum, which is based in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where I was most recently from the end of 2014 until just this past August. And this project that I'm sharing with you is one I co-curated with Trevor Schoonmaker called Southern Accent, Seeking the American South in Contemporary Art. Now, I think that when we talk about the American South, it's one of the most difficult issues in society to talk about because in talking about the South, you have to engage with some of the darkest chapters of American history, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of legalized segregation, and legacies of systemic and ongoing racism. So not being a native of the South myself, I'm from Los Angeles, I was really fascinated by all the different ways people talk about the South. It's changing, it's not changing. So I worked together with Trevor Schoonmaker to put together a group show of 60 artists and 24 writers and contributors, each bringing their own unique perspective on how the South is changing or perhaps not changing fast enough. So what you're seeing here in these images is, for example, an image of a post office in the Deep South, which has since closed because of diminishing rural populations in the South. Some zip codes are having to be decommissioned. And so that's part of the narrative of the South becoming slowly more of an urban population demographically, as opposed to it traditionally being thought of as rural. What you're seeing on the right is an incredible photograph by the LA-based artist Catherine Opie, where you see a couple in Durham, and this is part of Catherine Opie's series of documenting queer communities in the South. And one of the pleasant surprises that she encountered as a non-native Southerner was the fact that there are vibrant queer communities throughout the South. And so she wanted to document this as part of ways in which the South continues to surprise and evolve. In the next slide, what I'm showing you here are some artworks by the incredible artist Hank Willis Thomas. And what you're seeing here are examples of the mirrored artwork called Ain't Nobody Gonna Turn Us Around. And what you see are photographs from the civil rights movement from 1964, taken by Spider Martin of some of the historic March through Selma to advocate for voting rights. There's even a photograph of the young John Lewis in these images, but these images are layered on top of mirrors, so that while people are taking in these images of the historic clashes between civil rights protesters and, for example, police officers on the Pettus Bridge in Selma, they're also seeing reflections of themselves. And so the intent of this exhibition was to provoke the questions: in what ways does the past inform the present? In what ways do we still have to deal with this legacy? And then on the right, you're seeing an image of a performance artwork that was part of this exhibition by Sonia Clark called Unraveling. And here you're actually seeing her participate in guiding this performance art piece, in which she guides one individual at a time to work with her on systematically unraveling a Confederate flag thread by thread. Now, this is deliberately a very laborious process that is meant to take a long time. It's meant to be difficult. And part of that is designing to speak to the difficulty in unraveling these legacies. So in this particular image, she's actually engaging in the artwork with the mayor of Louisville, Greg Fisher, who waited in line just like everyone else to participate in her incredible artwork, Unraveling. So I show this exhibition to you as an example of how I love to delve deep into the issues that concern a region and pull out what is relevant to all of us and what can we learn from the questions that are specific to a region. So in the next slide, please, I'm going to share with you a very recent project that I worked on at the Speed Art Museum called Ebony G. Patterson's While the Dew is Still on the Roses. This was a project that traveled to us from Miami, from the Perez Art Museum. And in the next slide, you can see examples of the lush work of Ebony G. Patterson. This was a what I would call a total installation, floor to ceiling, where she created what she called a midnight garden, or she wanted to create the experience of walking through a midnight garden. So to do this, we did floor to ceiling floral wallpaper of night blooming flowers. We did flowers, fake flowers dripping from the ceilings, sprouting from the walls, suspended in the video rooms. The subject matter in these images is actually a challenging subject matter, which dealt with the systemic problem of violence against Black bodies. So in her incredibly elaborate sculptures and tapestries, you would see hidden amongst the flowers the vestiges of clothes of Black bodies. So you wouldn't actually see their faces or skin, but you'd see the traces of their garments and their positioning of their bodies just by the indication of their clothes. So I wanted to show you this as an example of a very successful art exhibition where we dealt with challenging issues. We invited the artists to engage in a layered and complex dialogue, and we used art as a vehicle to open up a way to talk about these challenging issues. The artwork was beautiful, it was engaging, it drew people in, and I think also provoked much needed discussions in our community. Ebony G. Patterson actually taught for 7 years at University of Kentucky. She's now based in Chicago, but working with her on developing this very site-specific way of presenting art was really a joy. So all this leads me up to what is next at the MCA. So next slide. So what does this mean as far as what I'm thinking about for the MCA? I'm thinking about a lot of things. I will say it's been a joy despite the chaos of COVID, etc. It's been a joy to get to know Denver. I've been really enjoyed meeting with artists and community leaders, either by Zoom. Sometimes we go to the rooftop of the cafe. And I've been really thinking about what are the issues facing Denver? What do we need to think about as Denverites? And I will say that a point of attraction for me in coming here was the sizable Latinx population. I identify as Mexican American. I'm very proudly the daughter of immigrants. And it's really exciting to me to explore what does it mean to, as part of our larger program, push forward Latinx artists and highlight this aspect of our city. I also think, just as I did with Southern Accent, I would love to engage deeply with the history of Denver and what that means. Part of that is dealing with our colonial legacy. And so I'm so thrilled that right here in Denver at the Denver Art Museum, we have a premier world-renowned collection of Latin American art. Just as an example of some of the historical resources that I think we can absolutely delve into and offer to living artists as a jumping off point or a springboard for further interpretation. Next slide. I did want to share that this past fall, so it seems like worlds away, but only this past fall, so at this time last year, I actually did a residency in Athens, Greece, and was spending an extensive amount of time traveling through Greece, getting to know the issues facing Athens. And I mention that because it is a city with facing a lot of complex issues. As you may know, Greece has faced an extreme refugee crisis, near economic collapse. And yet, when I was in Athens, I saw incredible work being done by the artists there of, for example, turning unused buildings into pop-up art spaces, turning auto repair shops into pop-up art spaces, really being incredibly creative with the situation and the tools at hand. And that goes back to my foundational belief that no matter what the context, there's always incredible creative work being done, and it's so important to shine a light on that creative work. And that's very much what I would like to do for Denver. I want to get to know the city, explore it deeply, find out what voices have not yet been amplified, get to know Colorado, and really explore what do we see around the corner, and how do we promote that as part of our work at the MCA in the context of also bringing you fun international art from all around the world. I think that is just as, I know it's an abstract preview, but I will have more to show you in the future. In the meantime, I do want to take just a couple minutes to highlight the exhibition we have on view right now, because you really do have to see it. It's called Citizenship, a Practice of Society. So in this slide here, I'm showing you an example of an artwork in that exhibition. It could not be more timely. Here we are just days away from a historic election. And this exhibition deals very directly with what does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to be a part of a society? So in some cases, it addresses this issue very directly. For example, being a citizen addresses your right to vote, or whether or not you have the right to vote. So in this colorful, awesome artwork by Aram Hansi Fuentes called The Official Unofficial Voting Station, Voting for All Who Legally Can't, you have the opportunity to submit your ballot, whether or not you are, you can be under 18, you can be over 18. Regardless of whether you're a US citizen, you can submit your vote for prominent issues in our society, even cast your vote for who you think should be president in the next 4 years. And this artwork really highlights those who can and cannot vote in society and provides information. So for example, if you live in a US territory, you might not have access to that privilege. The colorful designs, next slide, as part of these voting booths are meant to emphasize that the act of voting is supposed to be felt as something to celebrate, something to be happy about, something to realize is a privilege of living in our society as an American. And so she wanted to create a party atmosphere as part of these voting booths that you can participate in. And then the last slide I'm going to show you as part of my presentation is the work Public Trust by Paul Ramirez Jonas. And this is an incredible artwork where he takes headlines from the newspapers and puts them on this tremendous, very tall board of letters So for example, in this artwork, you're seeing promises pulled from the headlines like WikiLeaks promises more Clinton leaks, or US companies pledge equal pay for women. So it calls to mind promises made by public officials, by companies, by politicians, but then nestled right in the midst of this are personal promises. So for example, this the one that's being displayed is a promise someone's making to their wife. So if you come see the artwork and you come on over the weekend while it's activated, there will be professional actors who will help guide you in articulating your own promises, either to yourself or to family members, whoever you like, and creating rubbings which situate your promises in the midst of promises pulled from today's headlines. So in other words, highlighting the fact that at the end of the day, trust in one kind of promise or another is what holds society together and what binds us together as citizens. So I think I'll stop there, and but I would be very happy to take any and all of your questions. Please don't be shy. Please feel comfortable chiming in as part of this super fun afternoon saloon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Miranda. That is amazing. And as Miranda just mentioned, please feel free to put your questions into the comment section. I do have a couple questions for you, Miranda, but I also wanted to say, we mentioned in the email that we were going to be giving away a prize, trick or no tricks, just treats. So our prize today for those who want to enter is we will renew your membership. If you're already at a dual level or higher, we'll renew you at that level. Or you can, when you get the dual membership, you'll get one of our boxes, which are available this holiday to give to all your relatives and loved ones. But it includes your membership as well as a couple drink coupons to come to the museum and have a drink in our lovely cafe. So we're going to be putting the form in the comments, and all you have to do is fill out your name, email, and zip code, and then we'll be choosing someone to win this membership. But while we're waiting on some questions to come in and for some people to fill out the form, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions, Miranda.
Yes, please.
So keeping with the Halloween theme, what is the scariest thing that has ever happened to you when curating an exhibition?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So if we could go back to the slide with the sea goddess. So in order to install this artwork, which was suspended from the ceiling in New Orleans Museum of Art's Grand Hall, someone actually had to climb into the rafters of the ceiling and crawl across 100-year-old wooden beams and glass panels, wearing safety harnesses, of course, but in order to hook the sea goddess up to the I-beams that were above the panels in the ceiling. Now, this is something we had never done before in the museum's history. We, of course, outfitted these folks with safety harnesses to prevent anything catastrophic from happening. But at the same time, I just remember I was up in the roof, up inside the ceiling with the artist and with her crew, and just hearing these like creak, creak as they were crawling across the rafters, and just thinking, oh God, you know, I hope that everything goes smoothly. Everything did, and everything was perfectly fine. But that's part of what happens when you push a building to new frontiers, if you will, as part of the process.
Awesome. And so I know not all things are scary. Sometimes they're just zany. What is the most zany request you've gotten, or a couple of requests from artists that you were like, what?
I've had some really weird ones over the years. At one time, I was working with the artists Quintron and Miss Pussycat. They're a husband and wife duo of an incredible musician who plays known in the genre of swamp rock, and his Miss Pussycat, or Panacea Theriac, as she also is known, is an incredible puppeteer, and she does these amazing artworks based off the worlds she creates with puppets. At any rate, they created and recorded an album in a sound studio we built for them on site at the museum. And they came in and punched a clock every day, worked on the album. But then one day they asked me, we really would like to spend the night at the museum and spend the night in the sculpture garden and record the frogs and record the insects. So, so we had to figure out how to buy them a tent and a sleeping bags, and we had to set up a camp for them in the sculpture garden so they could spend the nights there, record the animals. And then they told me that one day they found an arrangement of chicken gizzards in the sculpture garden that had clearly been left behind by someone who had done an unsanctioned voodoo ritual inside the sculpture garden. And so they showed up one morning, they're like, we found the leftovers of a voodoo ritual. We don't know how that happened. So yeah, that was one of the weirder ones.
Wow, that is bizarre. It looks like we're still waiting on a couple of questions to come in, which is good because I could ask you questions all day. I guess my biggest question is you're dipping your toes in now to the MCA. You've been here for a while. What are your experiences like? And then also, how do you start preparing for this role? You know, it's a lot to take on. So how are you getting ready, and what's your plans?
Yeah, so I feel like I've had some really wonderful studio visits so far with artists based here in Denver. Some of them have been in person, masked and distanced, of course. Some of them have been virtual, but it's been really fun just getting a feel for the artist scene here. There seems to be quite a lot going on. I would say on more of a personal note, as far as getting to know the landscape of the city, we've also really enjoyed exploring the city parks, walking around, you know, all the beautiful Washington Park, Cheeseman Park, just getting a feel for the folks and what all is happening here. And yeah, just doing a lot of rooftop meetings while we can still meet safely outside. But I'm really excited to start, you know, of course, once the fires die down, et cetera, I want to, you know, venture into the mountains. We went and saw Dinosaur Ridge to check out the dinosaur bones, but getting a feel of the natural beauty here, which is, of course, an incredible resource. And also eventually introducing it to artists once travel opens up. I know so many artists would be so thrilled for the opportunity to come to Denver and produce work and get to see work here and really delve into what all the things the city has to offer.
Awesome. And I know that this is one of those times where art is more important now more than ever. What have been some of the exhibitions to you that have stood out as like one of the most powerful or moving exhibitions?
Yeah, so there was this incredible show that had traveled through many American cities called Soul of a Nation, and I felt like that it was highlighting the work of 20th century African American artists, and I would say that's part of this much larger movement right now that I think is very positive to sort of expand the canon of who is represented and who are we considering as part of art history. I actually think it's a really exciting time to work in museums because we've been given permission to think much more expansively about who do we want to include and why do we want to include it. And so I think of this as a great time to be alive. I would also say the show that just came to the MCA, Nari Ward, We the People, was such an important exhibition because Nari Ward has been grappling with so many issues that we now consider very timely, like immigration, like citizenship, like gentrification, like social justice, except he's been doing it for decades. And you just had this awesome survey of his work where you showed his incredibly powerful stroller piece, Amazing Grace, with the hundreds of strollers. And you know, We the People, which I care for so deeply. I purchased that artwork for the Speed Art Museum. And it comprises of hundreds and thousands of shoelaces spelling out the words, we the people, provoking the question of who is a part of this nation. And so I was so happy that show was at the MCA while I was planning to come here. That was a total coincidence. But I do think he's one of the more important living artists out there today.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring Chuck back in and just ask you both just one last question. It's a very tough one. So welcome back, Chuck. But I'm going to start with Miranda, so I'll move you, Chuck, just until we get to you. But the question is, what is your favorite Halloween tradition? So Miranda, if you want to, or we want to start, Chuck, are you ready?
But the favorite thing I've seen in here for Halloween was actually, it was a Denver Cruisers. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's like a Denver tradition, and people ride around on their bikes, and they have themes, and they go bar hopping. But around Halloween, we had a Denver Cruisers show up here, and at the time, there were probably about 10 people in the bar, and we had probably about 95 pirates and sailors walk in because it was a nautical themed night. And so we had like 98 pirates and sailors walk in here and all want a beer at the same time. So that was like the coolest Halloween thing I've had around here. It was super fun. Yeah.
Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, so of course I loved Halloween in New Orleans. I felt like that was always a place where you got a very special kind of haunted experience. I would say a Halloween tradition that is popular in my family is actually talking about the fact that my great-grandfather is known in his village as a ghost. Domingo Velasco, who's my great-grandfather, supposedly was very wealthy, but also very miserly. And the way the story goes in my family that when he knew that the revolutionaries were kind of ride through his village, he hid a bunch of gold in the walls of his hacienda, basically. And according to family legend, no one ever knew where they were hidden or what happened to them. So in the years since, people have actually gone into the walls and dug up the floors trying to find the gold. But then we've even heard stories of people seeing my great-grandfather walking around at night in a white vaquero suit. I mean, I feel like I couldn't make this up. So I don't know. Sometimes I think about the fact that, you know, Domingo is out there maybe terrorizing someone right now.
Wow. Well, I just want to thank you both for being here and thank everyone for watching. Make sure to tune in next month. We'll also be on Thursday. We have free citizenship programming happening every Wednesday. So make sure to tune in and look at those. And if you have any questions, you can always reach us at membership@mcadenver.org. Have a great day. Have a safe and fun Halloween. And we look forward to seeing everyone next month. Bye.
Awesome. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.